Currently, there is a war being waged in America. It's a war that you probably don't know much about. It threatens our sovereignty, our economy, our individual rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It is being waged by corporations and the elites all across the world. And the effects of this war can already be seen in places like France, Ireland, and the Netherlands. It is not the war of free speech. It's not the war against religion. Believe it or not, it is the war on beef. Using climate change as a shield, this war seeks to control all food production. Major players, including politicians and mega corporations, all at the expense of the small American farms and the small farms all around the world. One rancher has been speaking out about this for quite some time. He's here to talk about what you can do to stop it. He's a cattle rancher that believes in private property rights. He is the committee chair of OurCalf USA. His name, Shad Sullivan. Shad, thank you for coming in.
Thank you. My pleasure.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
You wrote an amazing letter that I think was so well thought out and talks about what people are facing. I don't think the average person has any idea the war on food that's happening right now.
None whatsoever.
And I first saw it because, I say I'm a rancher. I'm not.
Right.
I own a ranch and the cattle, and then I watch other people make magic happen.
I get it.
But it's a hard life, but it's a good life.
It's a good life.
You understand you just understand life when you're dependent on the land, on God, and the environmentalists that say, we have to preserve this land. There's no better conservationist than a rancher or a farmer.
That's right.
They know the soil.
That's right.
Okay. Talk about let's start in California.
Okay.
Let's go back to, when was it? 2008, I think. Yeah, 2006, Proposition 2. That passed. Tell me what that did.
The way I understand that proposition is 63% of the voters voted in favor of requiring cage size requirements for chickens and hogs and such as that. And so that did go ahead and pass, but we knew, we know that wasn't the end intention.
Yeah.
The end intention was no animals at all. And so they came back. This movement, this anti-animal ideology that is just sweeping across the earth right now.
Explain anti-animal ideology.
Well, in order to gain control of production and consumption, they have to have control of food production.
Right.
And the very ground level of food production is farmers and ranchers, right? And what do farmers and ranchers have? They have land, because it takes land and natural resources to grow our food. And it doesn't matter if you're talking about pigs, cattle, vegetable crops, whatever it is. And so the anti-animal ideology is a freedom taker. That's what it all amounts to, is liberty and freedom. And in order for them to have, and when I say them, I mean the global elite, to have control of all production and all consumption, they have to have control of that production. They have to have control of the land. And so that is where the anti-animal ideology starts. But it tends to run downhill into individual ideologies. There are ideologues out there who don't believe in eating meat. They
Right.
believe that cattle are harming the land. They don't like that. And so the global elite have used those ideologues as foot soldiers for their ultimate goal, which is total control.
Right. Global warming being used
Back
as,
then, it was global warming. When I was growing up, it was
global.
acid rain.
Okay. When I was growing up, it was global cooling.
Okay, global cooling,
yeah.
and then acid rain. Now we had global warming, and they realized that the majority of the world's population wasn't going for it, so they changed it to climate change. And this movement has been in the works for generations, but it's increasing because of our ability to learn. The internet. Mm-hmm. The Bible talks about all of this.
Yeah.
And the days that we live in. So it's gaining like fire in certain ways, and I see Americans starting to wake up and say, there's something not right about this. And so,
but the hour is growing late.
Yes,
really late.
It's very late.
So California just passed Proposition 12,
right?
And if I'm not mistaken, didn't Massachusetts also pass something like this? I
don't know about Massachusetts, but they tried it in Oregon. Mm-hmm. They tried it in Colorado with the Pause Act that would make any kind of action. If I needed to palpate a cow or pull a calf out, they made that a felony. They tried to make that a felony. It did not pass in Colorado, and I can speak for Colorado because that's where I'm from originally. Only because we are a one ballot initiative state, so we can only have one question on the ballot, and they had two. So it did not get out of committee. But they're coming back, and they're coming back with a vengeance through all states. So
you said in 2006 we knew that this wasn't going to end.
Sure.
Explain what California just did and why it affects all of us.
Well, with the passage of Prop 12, that would inhibit importers into California. That would regulate the people who sell into California under the same rules, which would eliminate a lot of transactions that they need for their economy.
And what they said was the pens have to be even bigger.
Yeah.
And they want the hogs to be able to turn around, and that apparently the ranchers are saying that's dangerous for the pigs.
That's right.
But everything has to be augmented. It would cost thousands of dollars for anybody to take these rules on. My first reaction was, good, then let California live in California, and no rancher should be changing anything. Let them feel the full ramification of this.
That's right.
But then what do the ranchers do?
That's exactly right.
Right.
And, California is one of our largest agricultural production states in the union. In many ways, they are. And there are vast ranches out there that this affects all of them, all production. The beef cattle industry is the last bastion of freedom. And so their ultimate goal is to get to us, and that's how they're doing it, is on the lower levels through, chicken, pork, and those other production means of production.
When you say this is the last bastion of freedom, what do you mean by that?
Well, as of right now, every center of production in agriculture is vertically integrated. We've lost the hogs. China owns the hog production in the United States. We've lost the chicken and poultry sectors to corporate control. We are importing 74% of our lamb is imported into the United States. We used to have 56 million head of lamb 3 generations ago in the United States. Now we have 5 million head.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, wait a minute. And that is because of regulation, just because you can't make a living at it? What is it?
Well, there's a plethora of reasons that come into it. Droughts may have an effect, but the overall mechanism here that we've seen come into play is corporate control. Mm-hmm. And that's what we're really seeing as a symptom of what's going on in California. This corporate control has emboldened, their power has become emboldened. And so the symptom of it is, hey, you're going to produce as we see fit or you're going to get out of the game.
Yeah.
And see, it's a very convoluted and complex issue, because on one side you have these ideologues, and then you have on the other side you have this takeover of corporate control in the United States, and when they come together, it's just like a snowball headed for hell, and it gets very complex. These issues that we're talking about are so complex, and I don't understand them all. I understand my perspective of it. I think the Lord has given me a good sense of where it came from and where it's going. It's not something that I set out to learn, but my family was affected by a land taking in 1999, and it opened my eyes to a corrupt system. And I was just a young man then, and that's how I came to be an advocate for freedom and liberty, because what they did to my family was absolutely everything opposite.
So I didn't understand until I started selling cattle. I didn't understand what a mafia system it really is. I mean, the farmer, the rancher, is held at gunpoint by, is it 3 or 4 companies? Four companies. And they process almost all of the meat. And so if you're not selling to them, where are you going to process?
Well, that's
right.
That's the question, right?
That's the question. Yeah. And so I have been the only way to become wealthy in ranching or farming today is to start wealthy. And then that, in time that'll go away.
That's right.
But we're to the point, I think it was this year or last year, where it costs more to feed the animal than they were willing to sell or buy at.
Absolutely.
And, there has to be some common sense. And the prices keep going down. And one year it'll be, oh, well, it was a drought. Oh, well, this was happening. Oh, well, this was happening. It never seems to go up and have really good years, several in a row. It's all down. And you can't convince me there's no collusion there.
No, there's total collusion. And I'll tell you this. The global elite, in fact, an individual from the World Wildlife Fund said, we have to use collusion in order to implement this agenda. And so they are using the corporate packers, and the corporate packers are volunteering for it, obviously. There's four main packers control 85% of the supply chain in the beef industry today. 2 of them are foreign owned. National Marfrig and JBS. And
why would we do this?
Why do we do this? Well, it all comes down to that complexity that I talk about, that is to weaken a nation. And you're seeing it all over.
So there is a movement to get regional and local packers, but it's my understanding that is really expensive and hard to build, and you don't build them overnight. But that's a bunch of ranchers getting together and saying, we've got to cut this beef ourselves. We got to package this beef ourselves, because we're getting robbed and being driven out of business by these giant companies.
Yes, sir. If there was anything that COVID did positive for us, it opened Americans' eyes to the instability of concentration.
Yes.
And, since then, the farm-to-table movement has been enormous. It's been a blessing. It's been a blessing for my family. It's been a blessing for millions of other families. Not only producers, but consumers, because they say, hey, we don't trust this system. How do we come together with the consumer? And that has taken place. And the USDA has come out with programs since COVID that allows for regional and local expansion of our meat packing supply. And I do think that we have been more competitive against the big 4 packers than ever before. Now, we should break those packers up. We have antitrust laws. Oh, my
gosh,
the Clayton Antitrust Act, the Sherman Antitrust, packers and stockyards.
The fact that those packers, I think 2 of them, are the leading people on fake meat should tell you everything you need to know.
Just last week, Tyson, announced a partnership with fake meat, and they are huge investors. The problem with as I say, it was a gift. It was something that COVID gave us, was that expansion of those local and regional packing facilities and the ability for us to take our product and sell it locally. But now they're coming in and saying, oh, we got the EPA, we got to go by their environmental regulations. So now there's local and regional packing companies that are going to have to spend millions and millions on wastewater treatment plants in their own organization. And so what does that do? That puts us back out on the street and more dependent. So we have to get on top of all of these things. There's a lot of legislation that's coming forward. It's a farm bill year, hopefully, and there are good things happening, but it's because of a small group of people saying we cannot, our country cannot sustain, and I hate that word, but it's a word, it's been stolen from us, but we cannot sustain what's going on. We have to be able to feed our own country and others to have food security, which is national security.
It is. I mean, people don't understand how, we think of ourselves as the breadbasket of the world. We're not. We're not. And that's by choice.
We could be.
Absolutely. But it's by choice. And I don't think people understand. I said this a few years back when I first came on with, ESG and the World Economic Forum and what they were talking about in Agenda 21 at first. Now it's Agenda 2030. Millions of people will starve to death all over the world. I mean, it will be the worst famine in human history if these people get their way.
Overnight.
Yes.
Overnight, because what people don't realize is there are so many facets to getting this food across the country. Here we have an attack on our energy supply. What does energy do for Americans? Everything. You look around this room right here, we cannot live without oil. Every single thing. We cannot live without those truckers. Those truckers are a huge part of our operations. They shut down for one day. I'm telling you, store shelves go empty overnight. We have no idea.
They are restocked. I think what is it? The average is 3 to 5 times a day. They're restocked.
Wow.
I mean, people don't understand how fast this can go away.
During COVID, I went up to my local bigger grocery store, and they have a beautiful meat aisle, and it was empty. And I said, well, what do you guys do here? And they said, well, we stock it at 6:30 in the morning, and everybody's figured out that the shelves are going to be empty by 7:30. It's empty. They did it once a day. Unbelievable. It was unreal in America that we would have, during that COVID issue, that we would have people in bread lines.
Yeah.
In America, that we would be destroying our harvests in America, the land of plenty. And that's something that kind of got me going. And I was like, this isn't the way it's supposed to be in our country.
And this is all coming from elites. 85% of elites and super elites. Super elites are ones that went to Ivy League colleges and have a doctorate. The elite are making $150,000 a year. They've gone to college, have one postgraduate degree, and they're involved in the companies or countries. They just did a poll on those people. 80+% say that Americans should not be allowed to eat beef or meat of any kind. 85%. I think people would be shocked to know that our world, and I don't think they actually mean it. Otherwise, why is Zuckerberg building a ranch where he's feeding his cows macadamia nuts?
Well, we have to remember what Klaus Schwab said in 2023 at Davos, and he said, you will enjoy meat as a treat.
Yes.
But not for sustenance. And we know beef is really the only animal that can provide total and 100% sustenance to human life. These elite that you talk about, I hearken back to my dad. He's gone now, But he was a self-made rancher, started with nothing. And I can say this because this is our business, but we did it with cattle, and it was hard. And we're not done doing it. But he always, on his deathbed, we have an old bunkhouse sitting out there, and that was the original homestead house. And in the last days of his life, I'd take him, wheel him over there, and I said, Dad, what are we going to do? And he says, son, we'll never change America till they sit in the dark, cold and hungry. And that's the truth. And he came from a place of suffering, so he understood that. But I think about these elites that you talk about, and I think about them at the same time. I think about all those people in those temperatures pulling calves and breaking ice up in the northern tier last week. I think about somebody on the side of a road with a flat tire. Those elites couldn't even change a flat tire. They couldn't do the most simple things that require real life. And here they are, demanding and dictating how we're going to produce and consume, not only in America, but across the world. But what you're seeing in Germany, in Ireland, in the Netherlands, that's coming here. We're on the cusp of it.
People don't understand. Netherlands, that is the breadbasket of Europe.
The biggest exporter of agriculture products.
Right. So you shut the Netherlands down and Europe begins to starve. But they're doing it in country after country, and they are ahead of us. And most people in America see these, farmers, and these radical farmers, as they're called. They're not radical. What are they asking for?
Under the UN rules, they regionally and incrementally push that ideology. And that's what you're seeing happen in the European Union. And they use it in the African Union. The only reason they haven't started it here, and they have started it, but they haven't won, and we're not going to let them win, is because the American cattle rancher owns his land. We have a constitution that guarantees property rights, and that is the foundation of everything. That's the only thing that's going to protect us, Glenn.
Because that's what's happening in the Netherlands.
That's exactly
taking that farmland away.
They're taking that farmland away, and we have to get on board and understand that our founding fathers and their creation of this living document we call the Constitution of the United States is the only way we save this country. And we save it through private property. And private property, it doesn't have to be land. It might be your coat. It might be a gun. It's whatever allows you to put food on your table. That is the foundation of what we're talking about. All of these issues that we talk about, and it doesn't matter if it's in the ag industry, the beef industry, oil, energy, all of it. Everything we talk about goes back to liberty and freedom. Are we able to produce it the way we see fit?
I want to talk to you about Relief Factor. Are you in pain, Boopy? You can come and let me kiss and make it better. No, that's creepy, really creepy. Let me tell you how you can get out of pain. Possibly 70% of the people who try Relief Factor go on to order more month after month. It is something that I tried years ago, never thought it would work, but it did. It broke the back of my pain. It's a daily supplement that helps your body fight that pain by fighting inflammation. 100% drug-free, developed by doctors just to help reduce or eliminate pain through reducing inflammation. Over 1 million people have tried Relief Factor's Quick Start. Would you try it? 70% of them go on to order it again and again. See if it can help you. Try their 3-week Quick Start Kit, $19.95. Comes with Relief Factor's Feel Better or Your Money Back guarantee, so give it a try. You don't have nothing to lose. ReliefFactor.com. 800-4-RELIEF. 800-4-RELIEF. ReliefFactor.com. Talk to me about NACs, National Asset Corporations. Thankfully, it has been withdrawn. The application has been withdrawn by the New York Stock Exchange, but I don't think that's the end of it. Because this is the loss of land and rights.
Yes.
So talk about what that is.
The natural asset companies, the New York Stock Exchange petitioned the Securities and Exchange Commission to create what they call natural asset companies. And they are so convoluted and so complex. It's hard to understand, but the basic is they would take control of our natural outputs. In other words, they would monetize and quantify our air, our water, anything productively tied to the land. And so at the end of it, in the beginning of it, it would affect really state and federally owned lands. Those lands that have been given over to conservation easements. Private lands, you could enroll your private land into it, but the gist of it is the end result is they take control of the management of those natural outputs, and then they can dictate how you produce on that land.
Right. You could be a cattle rancher, and cattle farts apparently the bane of everybody's existence. Right. And they can come buy the air rights, assets.
That's right.
And say, you are polluting too much. We need clean air here, and basically shut you down.
That's right. Because they have, under this rule, the rules of management would have to follow sustainability. Right. And so what is sustainability? It's what I've been talking about all day here. It's consumption and production control. That's all it is. When this is a global move to take possession of our lands, these are land grabs, and it didn't start here. Mm-hmm. I mean, we have national heritage areas. I was part of an organization that defeated one in southeast Colorado in 2014, and the only reason we knew about it, Glenn, was it was leaked from the National Park Service to an individual. They weren't going to tell us about that. You have conservation easements that people are going into, farmers and ranchers are going into under the guise of protecting their future rights on these lands. That's not what it's doing. It's giving their future rights away. They're the last owners that have productive principles, not the future.
I know. I'm afraid. I live in the middle of a national forest. I have 1,100 acres in the middle of a national forest. So I have a state road that goes through it so I can get to it, but I am terrified that land is not going to be mine.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you what, under some conservation easement contracts, my neighbor can put a conservation easement on his ranch, and under that contract, it can say no oil wells pumping in the view shed. Well, what does that do to you? It ends up kicking you out because nobody's going to come drill for oil on your land. They make all of these very corrupt principles, and they hide them in these contracts. And in my country where I grew up, southeast Colorado, all ranch country, thousands of farmers and ranchers put their land in easements, and my dad was like, "Don't do it. You're dictating from the grave."
Yes, it is so wrong when you say we are putting this land in conservation from here on out. You're going to be long dead. You have no right to do anything. You shouldn't destroy it, and you can't lock it up. You can do neither of those.
It's in the name of the dollar, though. That's the problem. I can conserve my land, and I can do that as we pass it down from generation to generation. I don't need somebody paying me to do that.
Correct.
I can do that. So when we have all of these cattlemen and women, I know going across Florida, everybody's talking about how many people are moving in, and we got to put these lands in conservation easements. Dadgum, do it yourself. Don't take the dollar to dictate from the grave that nobody can do anything with this land down the road. You can do that yourself. You don't need the money. You're there. And so here we are talking about conservation easements. We have the American Prairie Reserve in Montana, totally controlled by the World Wildlife Fund. The World Wildlife Fund is interested in management of the natural asset companies. You see how this is all interwoven and intertwined? These non-governmental environmental or extreme environmental organizations are so heavily funded that we can't compete. And now you have what they call public-private partnerships. They're the most dangerous thing on earth.
It's fascism.
It's fascism. It's any ism that you want to put. It is total fascism. And that's, I know people think I'm a little bit crazy.
No.
And I'm fine with that.
Yeah, me
If
too.
I can save my country and let my son taste the taste of liberty, taste the taste of freedom, I'm okay. Because what's happening, it's 2 + 2. You don't have to be a smart man. I'm not a smart man. I saw what was happening back in 1999, and then we come in about 2010, and they start talking about the Global Roundtable for Sustainable Beef. And when I hear global, and I knew that they were stealing the word sustainable, I knew we were in trouble. And I'm telling you, our trade organizations have signed on to the sustainability model. Mm-hmm. And they did it without knowing what true sustainability meant. There's only one sustainer, and it's not the global elite. We are in trouble, and I'm telling you, they're pushing since the delineation of the natural asset companies. They're coming out stronger than ever. They're pushing for global control through sustainable development, and it's not good.
What should the average person do?
We can do a lot of things. Number one, we can dedicate ourselves to the U.S. Constitution, that living document. We have to learn it.
Number one thing.
We have to do it, Glenn. We have to do it. We can support legislation by our state and national leaders that are actually on our side. Most of them are not on our side, even the Republicans.
No.
I say Republicans, Democrats, wings on the same bird. But there are a few Republicans out there that treasure liberty. So we have to support them, and we have to help them. We have to run for our local governments because they've infiltrated, cleared out. These extremists, these ideologues, they're patient. They're so patient, and they've infiltrated clear to the lowest levels. They're in our churches now. You're seeing it.
Oh, yeah.
You're seeing it.
They're absolutely everywhere, and you're right. They're patient.
It's all about incrementalism.
Yeah, and all of a sudden, if you're not paying attention, you find yourself going, "Wait a minute, when did that change?
Yeah,
what happened?
Exactly.
What happened here?"
Exactly.
And they're now so bold, talking in Washington, Idaho, and Oregon about taking 5 dams down. What happens to the farmer and the rancher in high desert with no water?
Yep. It's an unbelievable movement, but we can support local. We can buy local American-made products, and that's why it's so important for us to re-implement mandatory country of origin labeling. Everything we buy in the United States has a country of origin label on it, except beef and pork.
Yeah,
we
the
have
little
to do
flag
that.
means nothing. Product of USA, that means nothing.
It means nothing.
That means cut in the U.S.
They can repackage it. They can cut it, put it in another box, and it becomes a product of the USA. It is so deceptive because, I have a lot of friends across this country, and most of them are cattle ranchers, and we're not on the same side as these issues. I'm not a loyalist. I want to do what's right for the future.
What do you mean?
Well, a lot of people are loyal to their trade organizations, and you can see that here in Texas big. There's one of the largest trade organizations here is a great organization that provides a lot of good things, but they've signed on to the sustainability model. But their members don't understand that model, but they're loyal, and I call them organization loyalists. And I'm not that. I don't want to be that. I want to be an independent producer, and I want to.
We all should be independent. I mean, I was a Republican and not a Republican. I'll vote for Republicans but I'm not loyal to the institution. That's the problem.
Agree.
We need to be loyal to the Constitution and to God.
Yes.
Those two things, that's where your loyalty
God and
goes.
the Constitution,
Yes.
because freedom comes from God.
Yes.
Our true freedom comes from God. And, I'm not against those people. I'm just saying, wake up, because those things that you are voting for that you don't understand are going to put you out of business. See, tyrants have no loyalty, Glenn. At the end, one tyrant's going to kill the other. They don't care. And so this movement of loyalty amongst these people to depend on trade organizations to keep them in business, is going to come back to bite everybody. Because it's a pay-to-play system, Glenn. It's a pay-to-play system. And the global corporations are paying these trade organizations right now. USDA, United States Department of Agriculture, I'm trying to think of what program that is. I can't think of it right now. But
that's right.
Anyway, they partnered up with all of these trade organizations and media outlets. Farm Journal, USDA pays Farm Journal $40 million to promote the carbon solutions program.
Oh my gosh.
They paid ADM, Archer Daniel Midland, the largest ag company in the world, $90 million. South Dakota State University, $50 million. What are they going to do? They're pushing that ideology. They're pushing that sustainable development control mechanism that teaches our kids in the university system. It's done a disservice to us.
I will tell you that when I was reading the World Economic Forum's farming and food distribution plan, it's one of the most arrogant things I've ever seen. That by 2030, we will completely redesign from seed to fork the entire food production industry. And I thought, that took us hundreds of thousands of years to perfect. And to get it this close, it's not perfect, but to get it this close, and you're just going to arrogantly, a bunch of eggheads, say, you know what, we're going to do it completely different. That's nuts.
Who else did that? Mao, Hitler, Cuba. They all did it. You got caught with seeds, they killed you. You get caught growing a garden in Cuba, they killed you on the spot. We are on the cusp of something very dangerous if Americans don't wake up. And I don't say that to scare people, because the truth is it's a day by day. I say it because independent production, independent consumption, independent thought is so important, especially right now.
Tell me about the mRNA vaccine Bill Gates wants to give all the cattle.
Well, I don't have a lot of knowledge on that. I know there was one state that had a bill presented that would try to stop that. We do not do that in the beef industry, cattle industry now. I'm not saying the technology is not there. I don't know. That's not my area of expertise. But we don't do that. Now, somebody asked me here a while back about vaccines in cattle. I will tell you from my knowledge and my experience, and I'm what they call, I'm the middleman. I'm a stalker guy. So there's several segments. There's a cow-calf segment, stalker segment, feedlot segment. I'm the guy in the middle. And there are vaccines that we have to give our cattle. One of those is blackleg. That's a spore in the ground that can kill cattle quickly. We have to do that. Some of these other vaccines, I don't do. I don't participate in any of it. I don't know where the mRNA stuff is going. I think the technology is there. We know the technology is there. But it is dangerous. It's very dangerous. And, is it a part of the ESG, the radio for, RFID? They're trying to implement that without the will of the people right now in the beef industry. RFID, ESG, where all these cattle have to have an RFID tag to travel interstate. You have to register your premises. Who else did that? And so there's so many complex issues that are interwoven into this diabolical web of sustainability, and it's dangerous. It's very dangerous. And you know what? It's a freedom killer. They're all freedom killers. And I like to tout that I'm a freedom maker, not a freedom taker. I've never served my country in the military, so I guess this is kind of my way of serving my country, is to make sure that we can produce independently under the guise of our own thought, not under independent production, or not under the sustainable development. People don't know, under the Global Roundtable for Sustainable Beef, you have to produce as they see fit. or you get out of the market. That happened in Brazil under the Global Roundtable for Sustainable Soy.
What does that mean? What did they do in Brazil?
So they sell all of their soy to the European Union. And in order to be able to sell, you had to be a member or a part of the Global Roundtable for Sustainable Soy, which means that you produce that soy as they tell you to produce. They're pushing the same thing in the United States under the Global and U.S. Roundtables for Sustainable Beef. You get on board or you get out of the market. Now, here in the United States, they say, oh, Shad, you're wrong. That's a voluntary program. Well, I'll tell you, it's voluntary until it's not. Mm-hmm. And those programs have already been employed in the Netherlands, in Germany, across the European Union. And you're seeing what's happening. These farmers are revolting. Their freedom has been taken. What little freedom they had. They weren't like the United States. So we have to get on top of this, and we have to wake our friends up. And it's all interwoven into the property rights discussion. It's all interwoven into the free market capitalistic system, into the Constitution, into liberty. We have to wake up,
What is the first, what are we going to see? Because they're ahead of us in Europe. What are we going to start seeing? Or has it been held together enough to not make that big of an impact yet?
I think that we're immediately going to start seeing those production regulatory mechanisms come about. And they're starting through the RFID, ESG, in the beef cattle. There are a lot of cattle traded interstate in the United States, millions upon millions of head. And once you start putting that data information out there, I think we're in trouble.
Why? Why tagging them? My dog
they're saying it's for disease traceability. But we have an adequate system that traces disease. If they were worried about disease traceability, why did we move our disease laboratory from Plum Island to Manhattan, Kansas in the middle of cattle country? We did that. Foot and Mouth has escaped that laboratory off of Plum Island, off the coast of New York, before, dissipated out in the ocean. But we've moved that laboratory that contains all these deadly diseases into Manhattan, Kansas, right in the middle of beef cattle country? Are you kidding me? It's not, all of this is not if, but when. They have to take control somehow. And that's what this is. Data mining, all of it, Glenn. It's all so convoluted and confusing. I hate to think about it.
I know. I know. I've been doing this for a long time.
I know you have.
I know. You see with your brain and not with your eye. Our brain constantly senses what's happening around. And how and what we see not only depends on the strength of our own eyes, but the brain fills in certain things, and it helps us make optimal decisions. This is why you need as much vision field and peripheral vision as possible. Vision is so important to humans that almost half of our brain's capacity, 25% of all of the energy that we expend every day, is powering our eyes. It's an amazing thing. Rodenstock, really well known all around the world. They have come up with what they call biometric intelligent glasses. Your brain will adapt to them nearly instantly. If you've ever put on new glasses and you're like, oh, I got to get used to these, it's instant with this. They feel so natural, relaxing. The way they make the lens, it's like a hot knife through butter. And you'll have a seamless visual experience and visual acuity like you haven't experienced before since wearing glasses. Biometric intelligent glasses with artificial intelligence from Rodenstock. You can find them, only place in America, Better Spectacles. Go to betterspectacles.com/Beck. Schedule your teleoptical appointment. Get your glasses now for 60% off. betterspectacles.com/Beck. Let's talk about labeling here for a second. Grass-fed, I raise grass-fed beef.
Me too.
But then I sell them, and I know they go to a feedlot.
Okay.
and now they're eating grain and whatever. And it can still say grass-fed beef, even though at the end they got big and fat and everything off of corn.
Yeah.
So the label means nothing. It's finished beef, right? That you have to look for.
You know, I'm not an expert in that area. I know what I do is I actually finish mine on grass. Southeast Colorado you're able to do that because our grass is so powerful.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as the labeling of grass-fed, you know, there are supposed mechanisms in there through the organic movement that would supposed to guarantee that. But, you know, I question that because isn't corn a grass? Yeah, it is. So can you know, I don't know. I don't know.
What I'm getting to is like the made in USA, that label, product of USA, that label means nothing. Nothing.
Does organic mean anything?
What does organic mean?
Well, I mean, if you ask me, the corn is growing out of the ground. We finish them on corn. That's organic to me.
Right.
You know.
Right.
So I don't know. I'm not an expert in that.
So there's a new one, low carbon meat. What is that?
That is what I'm talking about through this carbon credit system that the USDA is coming out with, and I have ranchers that are neighbors that are participating in a program, a low carbon credit program through the USDA, getting paid to monitor their carbon emissions. And now how do you do that? I don't know. To me, it's a lot like going down to 7-Eleven and airing up your tire for 25 cents, paying 25 cents for air in your tire. I mean, it's very confusing to me. We have to have cattle to create this carbon is good, right?
Yeah, carbon is what makes everything grow.
You know, we have to have this. They say it like it's a bad thing, and under proper regenerative practices, we know that we're better than carbon neutral.
Right. We're carbon beings.
Yes.
We're carbon beings.
I wish I was a scientist, but I'm not, Glenn.
I don't wish I was a scientist if I had to play the game that they're playing now. I know my grandfather, he was a farmer, and I remember him saying, all these elite scientists and everybody with all of their college degrees come in, they don't have any idea what it's like to stick their hand in the dirt.
No,
and they are
none.
Everything they're preaching is wrong.
They have no stake in the game.
Yeah.
They have no stake in the game. And if they were put under pressure, they wouldn't win. They could not, put some of these guys out on the land and say, hey, in 6 months, bring us a crop. They couldn't do it.
Oh, no.
They couldn't begin to do it. I think I hearken back to my great-great-grandmother who was here in Texas, and her husband died the same week as her 8-year-old daughter. And on his deathbed, he said, take those boys and go to Colorado. And you know what she did, Glenn? She took 7 boys and a girl, and she went to Colorado, and she dug her own house. She dug it out of the ground, a dugout, covered it with sod. She dug their own well. You think these people could do this now? No. Everything is so easy for us. We've had the best life. But now we have people who want to take that from us.
Tell me about in Colorado. I was looking at a piece of land in Colorado. It was a little town, actually. And they said, you have to be really careful here because you don't own the water. And I said, well, what does that mean?
Yeah.
And they said, well, in Colorado, even the water that falls as rain.
That's correct.
Belongs to the state.
It belongs to somebody. Somebody
but
down.
Not you.
But not me. I can remember when my dad, and this gets into some very convoluted and confusing stuff, but I can remember my dad told me in the 1950s, he says, I remember when they came and stole our water. And I said, what did that mean, Dad? And he said, well, we owned our water under the ground until the 1950s, and the state come in and said, no, that's not your water. You have the right to use it, but it's not yours. They have what they call preemptive rights. And so some of these rights go back to the 1870s. Those people still own their water rights. But over the years, the need for water in Colorado has increased because of the Front Range increase in population. And so in my county, Crowley County, Colorado, they came in 3 different times, and Aurora, Colorado, Denver, bought the water from the farmers that owned it from those preemptive rights. So now when you sell your water rights, it's worth a fortune. That water must go to feed the people, right? So no longer, our county is no longer irrigated. It is now dry land, and there's no farming left. And it became one of the poorest counties in the nation because we sold our water. Some of the older generations kept that water. But any water that is produced in Colorado that flows out of the state belongs to somebody or somebody else. Kansas came in and sued Colorado for their water down the Arkansas and I believe the Republican rivers. I think that was Nebraska. And Kansas won that lawsuit. So now any well that is irrigation well must be augmented. They must keep track of that. It's paid for. You cannot capture your water in the big cities off of your houses. That water must go into a tributary because it is owned by someone else. Water law in Colorado is, if I was a young person, would be a great thing to get into. It is enormous. And I grew up, and my dad told us, he said, kids, water's worth more than oil and gold. He pounded that into our heads, and it is. And luckily we have good water where we're at, but we don't have any water rights. We just have the right to use it.
I was walking on a golf course once I don't play golf, and neither did he. We were just on a golf course. We were walking on this golf course, and he's a multi-billionaire. And he said, Glenn, buy water.
Yep.
That's all he said. And then he turned around and started walking. I stood there for a second. I'm like, I don't know what that means exactly. And I run back up next to his side as he's walking. I said, why do I feel like somebody who was walking a golf course with Rockefeller Sr.?
Yeah.
And he said, buy oil. Yeah. And he said, because it is the next oil. But he said something interesting to me. He said, do not be the owner of the water. He said, you will be an oil company. You will be demonized and torn apart. He said, you need to be somebody who is searching for water or purifying water. He said, otherwise, you might as well be an oil guy.
Yeah. I can see that. Yeah, water is a huge thing in Colorado. And, here we go again under the America the Beautiful executive order, 14008, the 30 by 30, Biden's America the Beautiful plan is supposed to take control of conserve 30% of the land and water by 2030 across the United States, only to be followed up by the UN 50 by 50 resolution. Conserve 50% of the water, the world's water and lands by 2050.
Totally changes us.
Oh, totally.
Let me ask you this. I was at another friend who has probably 5,000 head of buffalo.
Wow.
And it's an amazing sight. Mm-hmm. It's an amazing sight. And we were talking, and you could see that one doesn't really look like bison. That one looks more like a cow.
Cattle.
Yeah. And it's all from the inbreeding of,
Sure.
And I said, where do you get the pure buffalo to start with? And he said, you don't. And I said, why not? And he said, the government is the only owner of all bison, pure bison.
I did not know this.
Yeah. And he said, they're Yellowstone, and when they have to thin the herd, we'd take them so we could bring that animal back. And they won't do them. He said,
destroy them.
They'll destroy them before they'll ever get rid of them. And that, to me, that said something about, and then living next to them as a BLM, they're not good conservationists. They're not good landowners. They're not good for
No.
Animals.
No. They're not. They're absolutely not. They're fork-tongued. That's no surprise to me. I know that if those management skills of those people, I've often questioned, because that's where really my advocacy started, and was watching them try to manage my family. And,
what happened to your family?
Well, I grew up on a ranch in southeast Colorado. We owned a ranch, but we also leased a big ranch. And back in 1992, my dad decided he would buy that ranch. And so within that parameter, it was fairly large. There was 12,000 acres that belonged to the state of Colorado. And it was in 160s, 320s, but it was unfenced. And so the state came to us and said, hey, if you're going to buy this ranch, we want our 12,000 acres in one block. And we want that block here. And it happened to be over the main water source. And so it stopped the sale of the ranch. And they knew that we kind of...
How could they just declare that that's where they wanted?
Yeah, that's the question. And that's exactly why my dad said, we're going to kind of back out of this. But to make a long story short, in 2 weeks, they owned the ranch, the state of Colorado. They're not supposed to be in the ranching business.
Mm-mm.
They're not supposed to be competing. And now they own multiple ranches in partnerships with organizations like the Nature Conservancy. And that is spread wildly in Colorado. And so that's what happened to me. That's what happened, was that land taking. And now we've got another deal coming on that, Colorado passed through legislation that we needed to be 100% renewable by 2030. So now we have companies, mega companies like XL Power coming in and saying, hey, we're going to put this power line across your ranch and we're going to pay you this much. You don't have the right to negotiate with us. We're going to take this land this way. Here's what we're going to pay you, and you got to keep your mouth shut. That's what's happening to me right now on our ranch in Colorado. And no negotiations. I said, they offered us a dollar amount a year ago, and I said, no, thank you. We've been here for 4 generations. We've put the time and effort into our ranch. We've put the time and effort back into our local community, which is most important for us, the youth of our community. And you're going to tell us that if we don't take what you offer, we're going to eminent domain you? That's what they told us. And that's what they're trying to do. No negotiations. Is this even America? Is this even America?
Not anymore. Not anymore.
My dad is rolling in his grave over a lot of things, and there was a lot of things that happened over the since he's died in our country that probably would have killed him. And it's all interwoven, Glenn. That's what you have to understand, is it is all that one-way ticket.
It's funny because people think this is about Biden and Trump or Democrats and Republicans.
No.
It's not.
No.
It's the elites against the people. Even the socialists and the Marxists are going to be very surprised. They're not going to be the winner in the end.
No.
It's the giant corporations in bed with the government.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that pay-to-play system, that's why I always said, which I never will, run for legislation. The first thing I would do is end lobbying. This lobbying power is so enormous in the United States. We can't do that. We cannot keep a free country under pay to play. Cannot do that. We have to end that. These corporations that have taken total control of everything below them, it's a real problem. We better get on top of it. But I think, there was one individual here a while back that said, fundamental change. And here we are.
Yeah.
Maybe he didn't have enough time in office to produce that fundamental change, but
it's being done now.
It's being done now.
We have, if we don't stop it this election, the world will be just a very different. It's not just America. It's the whole world.
It's the whole world.
Whole world.
We know that. We know that, we know what the Bible says, and guess what? Our enemies know what the Bible says.
Mm-hmm.
And so they have to move fast, and they are moving fast, Glenn.
Yeah, no,
it's a crazy place. The only thing I worry about is my kid.
Mm-hmm.
what is going to happen to my kid? I hearken back to those images that we see on TV and in movies with them loading them on cattle cars. And it comes to my mind often. My son is an only child. Well, he's got an older sister, but she's 30 years old. She's out of the house. So we're raising him as an only child. And if I was to die, what would he do? What would he do? That's why we have to ensure this protection that the Constitution gives us for individual liberty. We have to do it. Whatever it takes, we got to do it. These guys down at the border, as far as I'm concerned, they're heroes today.
Mm-hmm.
They're saying, no, we're not going to do this. We're not going to destroy our country. And that's a whole different convoluted mess, but it's all part of it. It's all part of the movement to destroy America. We have to be, we have to carry our fiduciary duties as citizens.
Yeah.
We have to, Glenn.
Yeah. And do it in a way, we can be angry, as the scriptures say, we can be angry, but we cannot sin in our anger.
There is righteousness in our anger.
Yeah.
We can be angry, and we can protect our families as we need to protect them. But we want to, if we're going to save America, and that's what ultimately we're trying to do, is save our country. The greatest country on earth, the beacon on the hill. It is everything they say it is. And the blood shed that these men and women, millions of men and women, spilled their blood so we could sit here and talk like this without reprise, hopefully.
Yeah.
It's a big deal.
The good news is we know how it ends.
Yes.
I don't know what it's going to be like to get to that part, but evil is always conquered, and these rights they belong to him, not to us.
Amen.
And he's just not going to. I mean, we may lose them, but they'll be found by others someplace else, and freedom will not go away. It just won't.
Yeah.
Shad, thank you so much.
Well, I hope you enjoyed it, and I sure enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah,
and
me too.
I'm very thankful for you and for your work.
Thank you.
You're welcome.